said, and I believe, I've not seen it to be any different, that paper is the oil of any bureaucracy. Now, what comprises paper is changing in our society. It's changing from this. It's not papyrus, but it's wood pulp-based paper. And it's moving to that. And you take the light away and the screen and it goes digital paper, but it's paper nonetheless. And if you think about it that way, paper is by and large what systems pay for. If you have work done on your automobile and the mechanic says, okay, Mr. Jones, that will be $875. And I did a brake job on your car, okay? And you go, okay, I'll pay you my $875. That's pricey in our country, but I just paid that for a big truck I have. And they don't give you a receipt, then you kind of wonder, did you really do it? You know, what's the price of the parts? What was the labor? And how can I verify that you've done it? I mean, even in our sales transactions, we want receipts. And again, I understand receipts have gone digital just like other pieces of paper have, but we're still producing a documentation for a service. And the profile is the name of the in this case, the documents that describe what you found in discovery. And on one hand, it is what most of us do not like. It's paperwork. And on the other hand, it can be this cathartic activity of actually coming to terms. See, I mean, it's one thing to learn about a person. But what if the great scientist of our day, I've evoked Margaret Mead, what if she had simply said, okay, I had all these experiences out in the South Seas, but I'll just keep it in my head and tell my friends. We would have known almost nothing about what happened. It's only by documenting it, putting it down, you know, physically on paper or digitally on paper, however we want to see it, that we actually get to communicate that which we've learned about the person. And that begs a format. And there could be literally limitless formats. I don't think that there is a perfect one. From the very beginning, Mark Gold and Associates, when confronted with this issue, we went back to a guy that had influenced, it actually was a close friend of Mark Gold, a man named Lou Brown, Lou Brown was an outrageous professor at the University of Wisconsin, at Madison, Wisconsin. Mark and Lou were close friends back in the late 60s, all through the 70s, and into the early 80s when Mark Gold contracted cancer and died in 1982. He and Lou were very close friends. Lou Brown continued teaching at the University of Wisconsin for another, I would say 10 to 15 years, well into the mid-90s, when he retired. And now he's living today in our version of Melbourne, which just happens to be Melbourne, Florida, instead of Melbourne, Australia, in the state of Victoria. So he is retired, he's very much alive, and he was just this outrageous guy. And he was one of the first to suggest a strategy of getting to know people through what Lou Brown called the domains of life. Now, he was trying to solve a curricular challenge for teachers who were working with students who did not fit the traditional academic curriculum. And Lou Brown was suggesting, if you would go into their lives, and he meant literally go home, talking to teachers, find out about students, and then understand them through these domains of life. And the domains of life would be what would be typical for all of us. But for instance, recreational domain. Domestic domain, keeping up our homes, the whole maintenance and how do we make our homes work. There would be like a shopping domain and a health domain and an educational domain. I mean, all of us have these domains of life. And Lou Brown just suggested these domains would be useful ways of thinking about people because all people have to participate in these domains of life. And unfortunately, I will tell you that this research he did, while it enjoyed a brief flurry back in the late 70s, kind of went out of use by and large in our field. We thought, oh, that's too simplistic. I mean, he's just, we need to talk about, high-level academic interactions, not something as basic as the domains of life. And a lot of universities didn't pick up on it, although Lou Brown continued all through his career to recommend it. Well, when I was doing doctoral work at Syracuse University in the mid-'80s, I had the great pleasure of working with a student who was one of Lou Brown's doctoral students, and she had gotten a doctorate and was trying her best to confer the same information and status upon me. She failed, I will tell you. But she did convey information, and I was much influenced by Lou Brown's work through Jan Nisbet, who was the student that I was talking about, who is now my major professor. And we were confronted with a challenge of finding employment for 28 students that was actually, if you will, to pay from the rationale for my doctorate and a few other doctoral students during the mid-'80s, right at the time supported employment was about to be created. And she wanted us to come up with a framework of understanding who the student was. Now, we had no term discovery, we had no term profile, and we said, well, Dr. Nisbet, can you suggest maybe a strategy for us? And she said, well, your students dig into some of Lou Brown's work of 8 to 10 years earlier, and I think you'll find some direction there. And a guy named Dave Hagner and I, a co-student of mine, Dave and I spent a lot of time going through this work that Lou Brown did, and we found these domains of life. And we said to each other, she wants us, she being our professor, she who holds the keys to what we want. If we would use that framework, we would have a design to understand these young people we were working with. They were all transitioning from school to adult life. And so Dave and I just kind of went into Lou Brown's stuff, cited him appropriately, and developed an outline, simple outline, that we call the profile. And we did that in 1986. And that for years was the term of art used for discovery. It was called the vocational profile process. But it was form-based and form-focused. And that form had these life domains, and we would describe the person in these domains. The more we got into qualitative research, the more that descriptiveness became part of what we were doing.